This is From Anxiety to Love Radio, the show about undoing anxiety through A Course in Miracles and other pathways of love. Gain insights and tools to deepen your awareness of the peace that is already in you. I'm your host, Corinne Zupko. Welcome to the very first episode of From Anxiety to Love Radio. I'm delighted to meet you and to welcome you to this amazing community of people who have come together to heal the mind and to remember our truth, which is love. It's been my experience, and I know it's been the experience of others, that in remembering this truth, anxiety cannot exist. So in this first episode, I'm going to share a few key points for you to keep in mind as you tune into the show. Number 1, all of our episodes relate in some form to undoing anxiety. And what I mean by that is this. I'm going to share tips and insights with you about undoing anxiety at its source, which is our belief that we are separate from each other and from love. And when I say love, I mean love with a capital L. This is the love of the universe, and it's a love that is absolutely unchanging. I'm not interested so much in teaching more Band-Aid approaches to just managing anxiety, for instance, like simple deep breathing, because that didn't work for me in truly healing anxiety. Of course, techniques like this can certainly be helpful to manage anxiety. They have their place. I'm not knocking them. But the anxiety I used to suffer with was so debilitating that these more surface level approaches were only temporarily helpful. And I wanted something permanently helpful. I wanted an approach that went deep into my mind to exhume the fear for healing. So although tips for managing anxiety will surely come out on the show, like deep breathing, the core focus of the show is on undoing anxiety through pathways that help us remember love. Number 2, I want to share a bit about A Course in Miracles. So a pathway of love that has been truly helpful for me in undoing anxiety is this pathway of A Course in Miracles. It's a book, you can buy it in any bookstore, and it's a spiritual pathway of non-duality. Non-duality means that there's not two levels of reality, but there's only one. There's only love. The Course is one pathway of love of many, and it teaches us how to remove the blocks that we've interposed between love and our awareness of love. So it's a process of unlearning these false beliefs in our mind. Here are a few Course terms and definitions that you'll hear me often use on the show. Miracle. A miracle is defined as an expression of love that includes a shift in perception. Inner teacher. Your inner teacher is the part of your very own mind that remembers truth and love. This is the part of our mind that we're learning how to listen to. You can call it whatever it is that you're comfortable with calling it, your intuition, your inner guide, your higher mind. A Course in Miracles actually refers to this part of your very own mind as Holy Spirit. And in my book, From Anxiety to Love, I call this your inner therapist. Ego. This is known as the small self. I often call this the lowercase s self. The ego is the part of the mind that believes it is separate and actually loves being separate. Through our practice of Course principles, we're learning how to listen to our inner therapist, our inner guide, instead of the ego. When we give our fearful ego perceptions to our inner therapist, we get back a miracle instead. We get back that shift in perception from fear to love. For a great 7-minute video of an overview of A Course in Miracles, I want you to check out the video by my friend and colleague, Craig Villarubia. So please be sure to visit the show notes for episode 1 to get the link to watch this video. Although A Course in Miracles is what informs my approach to healing anxiety, I will be speaking with guests who are course students and are not course students. We're all called to heal, but our paths vary. So we'll be speaking to all different types of guests. Number 3, I wanted to share a little bit with you about my story. I want you to know where I'm coming from in terms of anxiety, because where I am coming from was way beyond just being stressed. Where I'm coming from is no joke. I used to live in an inner hell of debilitating fear about almost anything. I pretty much was born anxious. I have been anxious since birth. My first psychiatric diagnosis came at about the age of 2 when I was diagnosed with separation anxiety disorder. And I struggled with a lot of childhood fears and worries. When I got to college, things sort of exploded. I had learned that a student who I didn't even know died very suddenly of meningitis. Supposedly he was fine at a party one night and dead the next morning. This unraveled me at the seams. After I learned this, I remember calming myself down during the day, going to bed, but I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a flood of stress hormones, and I was in the middle of my very first panic attack, and I didn't know what was happening. It was so scary. But that's when things really got interesting for me, because that night at 3 a.m., I called my mom. She miraculously picked up the phone and instilled hope in me that we would find help for me. The only thing that she could give me, that she felt she could give me, was A Course in Miracles. Now, I got into counseling and I had a really good experience with my counselor, but the course was something that she had tried to speak with me about many times, and I would literally plug my ears with my fingers and say, I don't want to hear it, speak to me in English like you used to. And it was only once I was in this place of desperation that I was open to the message of the course. I remember opening the book for the first time and reading these words, "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." And I went, huh? I didn't get it, but it struck something in me. Something in me resonated with that. And it motivated me to keep studying the course. And as I did, I would find that my peace would be slowly restored. There'd be pieces that I would read that I would understand that gave me hope and peace. And that kept me going with studying the book. Now, it's important to note, fear is a shapeshifter. If you think about a leaky pipe, panic attacks and, let's say, fears of sickness were two of the leaks in my pipe. And when I started studying the course at this time in college, definitely the panic attacks decreased, and maybe the fears of illness didn't so much, but there were other fears that got better. But because fear is a shapeshifter, plug up those holes, the leaks are just going to spring from elsewhere in the pipe until you get to the core of where the fear is coming from. So essentially what happened after college, joining the workforce, I had no more panic attacks, but my fears changed. I could no longer travel or get on an airplane. I couldn't go near hospitals. I couldn't get needles or anything like that. I was even really fearful of taking any kind of pills. These were ways that the fear sort of shifted. It changed for me because I wasn't yet getting to the source of the fear. And in about 2009, I had another extremely debilitating episode of anxiety relating to the place where I was employed at the time. This anxiety episode felt worse to me than the one that I had gone through in college. It was at this point that I realized that I had been studying A Course in Miracles only to a point. I'd open it, read it, feel better, put the book down, and keep going about my day. And no real, although some change happened, no real lasting change was happening. So it was at this point in 2009 that I really started living these principles. I really started turning to my inner teacher in every moment, in withholding nothing, and asking for miracles constantly. And this is when things really began to shift for me. So this is where this show fits in, because this is about undoing anxiety. So in my healing, there were some mindsets that I adopted that helped me greatly. And this leads into my fourth point. So number 4, some helpful mindsets. These mindsets pave the way for miracles and will greatly help in exponential self-growth and in a rapid return to inner peace. The 2 mindsets have to do with willingness and honesty. So let's talk about willingness first. Willingness is openness. It's an openness to question all of your beliefs. It's an openness to learn. And it's an openness to experiencing shifts in perception. Willingness is also the ability to not hold onto a thought system that is no longer serving you. So there's this willingness to release what doesn't serve so it can be replaced by love. There's a willingness exercise that's been so helpful for me, and I talk about this in my book. First, think of something that you're currently struggling with. It can be a fear, it can be a situation, it can be a conflict with a person, and ask yourself, am I willing to see this differently? If the answer is yes, you've found your willingness. If the answer is no, ask yourself this next question. Am I willing to see this differently? And if you're willing to be willing, there, you found your willingness. And you can keep taking it back a step again. Are you willing to see this differently? There maybe is your willingness. So we can keep taking it a level back until we can touch our willingness. This willingness is key in wanting to experience a miracle, to exchange a fearful perception for a loving perception. So the next mindset that I mentioned is honesty. I cannot emphasize enough how important self-honesty is. This includes honesty with yourself and honesty with the part of your mind that remembers love, which is your inner teacher, your inner therapist, your higher mind, whatever you want to call it. Honesty means that you're willing to own your thoughts, your behaviors, and take responsibility for them, even if they're icky. So honesty means that if we have an icky, judgmental thought fly through the mind, rather than denying that it's there, we can say, oh yeah, I just had a thought that was really judgmental and I'm willing to see this differently. That's what I mean by honesty. It means that you're super willing to be honest with your inner teacher. This honesty is so important in healing anxiety. So number 5, here's the part where I want you to take action. What I would like for you to do is to write down the words willingness and honesty. And on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of these mindsets, 1 being a low level of willingness or a low level of honesty, and 10 being a super high level, I want you to assign yourself a number for each of these mindsets. So where would you rank yourself on willingness between 1 and 10? And where would you rank yourself on honesty between 1 and 10? Be super honest, jot that number down, don't feel guilty about it, and know that as you practice these tools that you'll be learning in this show, wherever those numbers are, they're only going to get stronger. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for engaging in this work, for being part of this community. A Course in Miracles teaches that we are one. There is one mind. So literally, the inner work that you're doing benefits me, and the healing, the inner work that I do benefits you because we are one. So thank you so much. I'll see you on the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode of From Anxiety to Love Radio, please share it on social media. Head over to our home base at FromAnxietyToLove.com for show notes and more resources. Also, if you love the show, please give us a rating on iTunes, write a review, and hit subscribe so we can reach more people who are dedicated to healing the mind. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.